The Sierra Peak section is part of the Angeles chapter of the Sierra Club, and we kind of run outings and do some leadership training for people to lead people into the Sierras to climb these, well, we have 247 peaks on a list that we maintain. We also maintain the summit registers on those peaks. So we wanted to thank everyone who is coming tonight. We know most of you who we don't know are here because of our featured speaker, which is great, but we'll also plug our organization while you're all here, and we hope that you might look at what we do and join us and hike some peaks with us when we can do it better right now. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Vitaliy Musiyenko, to give us a presentation about a massive alpine traverse he completed in the Sierra last summer and what it took for him to get there. Vitaliy has made a name for himself in the last few years as one of the leading American alpine climbers, putting up first ascents in the Sierra and taking on hard alpine routes in Alaska, Patagonia, and elsewhere. I had the pleasure of being one of his climbing partners on Denali in 2011 when he was just getting started, and I was invited onto a private trip with him and two other people. And that was a great trip, and we all summited. He's gone on to much bigger things than I have. Since then, he's honed his skills and expanded his pursuits. I know he participated in Bob Burb's Sierra Challenge, which maybe got him a taste more of the Sierras. He's went on to more rock climbing, doing a number of routes on El Capitan. He did perhaps the first solo ascent of the rarely climbed Widow's Tears, an ice climb in Yosemite Valley. He's climbed on Fitzroy in Patagonia, and last year he returned to Alaska and got the second free ascent of the Denali Diamond, one of the hardest alpine routes on Denali. His Sierra routes have been published in the American Alpine Journal, and I understand he's working on a guidebook for his Sierra climbs. We are thrilled to have Vitaliy here tonight to present his story of the Goliath Traverse, a 32-mile-long solo alpine traverse from Taboose Pass to Paiute Pass that included summiting about 60 peaks in one continuous week-long effort. So with that, Vitaliy, welcome, and please take it away. Hopefully you can share your screen and bring up your slide, and we'll turn it over to you.
Hey, Paul, thank you so much for such kind words. And I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me as a speaker. And I came a full circle, I can say, from learning snow camping from the local Sierra Club. Back in 2009, I took a snow camping class when I didn't know anything about camping in general, to now presenting for a lot of you guys that I know from summit registers. So it's an honor, and I hope you enjoy the evening. And I certainly enjoyed the last hour of getting to know you in person. I've never used Zoom before, so it's going to be a learning experience. So let me know if you are able to see my slides when I get them onto the screen. Okay.
Okay.
Are you guys able to see?
Not yet.
No.
So did you hit the green share screen?
Oh, no, I didn't.
And then
try that.
Then you look for the slides of various screens, and then hit share again, and then it should come up. There we go.
Okay.
Now it's loading. And now we see it.
Okay. So in this slideshow, I certainly will not have the time to even bring up the fraction of concerns and issues and motivations that were put into this climb. But I wrote a full story for this month's climbing magazine, and actually they featured a photo of me on the cover of the article, which is this picture on top of Point Sonat, and that is Fitzroy in the background. And Point Sonat was actually the last peak of the Fitzroy skyline peaks that I've climbed in Patagonia, which will be something I will talk about in the slideshow. So I grew up in San Francisco after moving from the Ukraine when I was 13 years old with my mom. And before you guys will assume that I grew up being athletic, I wanted to let you know that at one point in my life, I was 300 pounds and totally not athletic at all. I think I had to work really hard to get to any sort of, athletic level that allows me to accomplish things today. In the article for climbing, I talked about some of the things that that are really hard to talk about, such as the nuclear reactor in Chernobyl blew up when my mom was pregnant, and she was not too far from that reactor, and a lot of the pollution traveled over towards where she was, and my brother came out stillborn. I was supposed to have a twin brother originally, and then from probably age 7 to the age 10, for most of the year, I battled horrible skin infections, which led to me scratching off skin all over my body, and basically on all the bends of my arms and elbows and legs and knees. I did not have skin because I would scratch it all, and then it would all get infected, and it would be covered in pus. And basically throughout my childhood, I wasn't even able to attend the gym class because I just couldn't physically. And at some point when in my early 20s, when I finished nursing school, I got into mountain climbing because it brought me to some of the most incredible places that unite all of us together. And this is one of my best climbing friends, Brian Prince. I am much less adventurous than he is, and I would probably not. I did not jump into the water from the rock because it's a little too high for me, and I'm afraid of heights, which could be a news to you. But one of the things that attracted me to the mountains is ability to be in some of the most incredible natural environments in the world, and to be a witness to things that I can only call magical. And this is Horsetail Falls in Yosemite, a beautiful sight and something that everyone should experience when it happens. Another thing that you should experience is moonbows, which are basically rainbows during the nighttime that you can only see during a couple windows of time in March or April or May if the Yosemite Falls are in full strength and the weather is clear. And of course, climbing can get you to some incredible places that allow you to experience physical joy of connecting with the surrounding and feeling free like a bird. And this is a picture I took on my first trip to Patagonia, and I actually had a decent weather window that I could have gone climbing, but instead I went for a hike to an area called Laguna de los Tres, and I am very happy that I did because to me it's not only about climbing but also about just experiencing the beauty of some of the places I visit and and I love photography as almost as much as I like climbing at this point. So after I got to um, be so heavy as a 15 and 16-year-old, I was actually working in Domino's Pizza when I was in high school, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to afford to buy clothes for myself in high school, because I was raised by a single mother. Um, After that, I got into high school football, and I got more and more into athletics. And even when I would go into the mountains sometimes, I would work out. And I really believe that it's the hard work that allowed me and led me to be able to do something like Goliath. I believe it's multiple things that led to Goliath being possible for me personally. Like, for example, when I was a kid and I didn't have any skin, I really learned how to suffer. And over the years, I got pretty athletic, and basically it put more than just being able to climb hard or being fit to be able to complete Goliath. And every place that I visited almost taught me something about myself over the years. For example, the last picture that I showed, that is one of the most beautiful peaks that I've climbed in my life, called El Pumayo in Peru. And during that expedition, we climbed several other peaks. And that was back in 2013. This is, again, with my friend Brian. The view is of Cerro Torre, another beautiful peak in Patagonia. And Patagonia is a place I love almost as much as the Sierra, but not quite. This is from a trip to Canada, where I learned a peak doesn't have to be very tall or very very high in altitude to be super difficult. That's the place where I go to climb some of the harder mixed routes, which train me for the bigger mountains. And I also found out that I actually enjoy running quite a bit. And that's basically me during the San Francisco Marathon, which I just did in October, which allowed me, running allowed me to sneak into Sequoia National Park when it was closed at one point in order to take this picture, which was only possible in March. And it involved about 15 miles of running with my camera gear, sneaking past a ranger station, which was actually, there were a couple ranger cars patrolling the area. So it almost felt as if I was a CIA agent trying to sneak into a hostile territory somewhere. There's a whole story. I could do a whole slideshow about just taking this picture. And back to Patagonia, this is one of the reasons why I love this range so much. It's also should be called the range of light, because the beauty there is quite immense. And you can start your hike and climbs from the city of Chaltén. And over the years, I was able to climb every peak on the skyline. So even though it's not quite the 7 summits, it's 7 stunning peaks, which are all technical climbs. One of the things that I learned in Patagonia actually is that I think I'm one of the most passionate people about mountain climbing, because when in the end of a hard climbing season, most people want to go home and are done with climbing and don't really want to be in the mountains anymore. I feel like I could be there for months longer. I never get sick of being in the mountains. And that's one of the main reasons I think that Goliath was possible for me, is that that joy from being in the mountains in general. This is a picture of Chakrarahu, which is one of the scarier peaks I've done in Peru, in Cordillera Blanca range, back in 2013. And this is Chipicalqui, another stunning peak that we've climbed over there. But one of the things I got to love in the Sierra is how rich our range really is and how much adventure there still is. This is actually not my picture, but one of the pictures that Abe Blair, a photographer, took. We're featuring it in the guidebook that I am working on right now, and we will be releasing it this year. Actually, it's a guidebook to the technical climbing in the High Sierra, and it shows one of the first impressive walls where I did the first ascent and the first free ascent of a route. And you can find walls like this one. It's called the Flatiron Butte. It's not an SPS peak, but it's a worthy climb in itself. Or a place like this, which is Lake Basin. I'm not sure how many of you were out in Lake Basin proper, but below Mount Ruskin and so on, and Marion Peak are some of the most beautiful lakes that I've seen in my life. And this is Clarence King, the northwest face of Clarence King, another area that I went to visit in order to do a first ascent of this 2,000-foot face. And this is Mount Cotter here, and Cotter North, another remote peak, which me and my friend climbed up the center here. The Angel's Wings. I've also climbed a few routes on the Angel's Wings. One was the first ascent, and one was a repeat of a route named Valkyrie. These are the Castle Rocks, not too far from my home. Beautiful place. That's another spot not too far from my home, in Granite Creek. And that's my friend Brian. And of course, in the Sierra, we have all sorts of wildlife, which I also love photographing. But in order to get to climbing all these technical first ascents, first I had to put a good amount of time in getting better at actual rock climbing. And this is one of my friends, Tom, here on one of the wilder first ascents that we've experienced in our life. And this is Moonlight Buttress, one of the nicer climbs in the Zion area. I'm not sure if many of you have heard of this one, but it's a classic rock climb, which and getting better at climbing helped me achieve things like first ascents on this is Bob's Creek Wall. I always thought that it would be really cool to climb a new route that goes up the center of this wall over here, because there were two routes that went up to the side, and I thought it would be an aesthetic thing to do, to climb up the middle. And the rock on some of these first ascents is actually better than it is on some of the classic routes that you would find in the local guidebooks to the Range of Light. So that's one of the reasons why I started working on another guidebook, which would be comprehensive. It's not a guidebook where I include only for my first ascents or anything like that. It's a comprehensive guidebook that highlights all the climbing that has been done in the High Sierra when it comes to all the new routes that were put up on it. And this is a photo I took from a plane when I was doing research and a photo shoot for the book. It shows two new routes that I've done on the east face of Whitney, one of which went up somewhere over here, another one close by to it over here. And Mount Whitney is one of the peaks that I've actually started my climbing career in the Sierra by doing the Mountaineers route. And over the years, I've done it over 10 times by about 7 or 8 technical climbs. One of the harder ones was called the Hairline, which me and my friend Chris did the first winter ascent up when I was trying to train for a trip to Nepal, actually, which didn't happen because of the closed travel due to COVID, which I'm sure stopped many of us from traveling over the last couple of years. But in that trip, we got an opportunity to camp very high on the east face of Mount Whitney. It was one of the more scenic camps that I've had in my life. And we also had an honor to haul our mountaineering boots and a giant haul bag up the wall. And every time I come back to enjoy climbing in Yosemite on the El Capitan and Half Dome, some of our favorite peaks. One of the highlights of my climbing career would probably be a first ascent on the south face of Half Dome, which me and my friend Brian Prince and Chris Coppold dedicated to one of our friends who recently passed away climbing in the High Sierra. We called it the Ksu Way, after late Michelle Ksu. And this is a trip to the remote Ciclorama wall, which me and my friend were able to free climb to do the first free ascent of the older route that was done by Galen Rowell, Claude Fiddler, and Vern Clevenger, as I remember. And there was some brilliant climbing on it. And maybe some of the best routes are still in the future. This is one of the project that me and my friends haven't completed yet, but hopefully we will in the future. And one of the things I wanted to mention today is the Sierra also lost one of its finest first ascensionists, and Richard Leversey, who recently passed away due to COVID in the last week. And his nickname was Mr. Big. Back about a couple years back, he encouraged me and my friend Brian Prince to do the first free ascent up the prow of the watchtower in Sequoia, which has never been free climbed. And for a while, we didn't think it would be possible for us, but we worked on it with Richard's encouragement and were able to complete the route. And we called it Big Time. So every time that I will be in Sequoia, the route will remind me of Richard. And I hope that his memory will live on in the future. It was one of the most encouraging people that I've came across. So yeah, and this is some ice climbing, one of the more important skills to acquire if your goal is to climb it up in the bigger mountains. And I feel like doing all of it is very important for climbing the Goliath, because you can't just simply be a good scrambler in order to complete it. You have to really be, you have to know, you have to be skilled in multiple areas of climbing. One of the non-traditional ways I prepared myself for it actually was even listening to ultra running podcasts and searching the latest gear in the market, because ultra running podcasts have a lot of useful information for how to stay hydrated and how to pace yourself on something like 100-mile run. And on the Goliath, I felt like every day, that's exactly what I have to do. I have to pace myself. And this is the west side of the Serra Torre, one of the most beautiful peaks in the world, in my opinion, which has some of the wildest terrain that you can imagine. You could be climbing ice and mixed terrain, and the next thing you're tunneling through rime, which covers some parts of the walls around you. It's wild. Me and my friend had the pleasure of shiver beaving about 50 meters from the summit to wait out a storm. To wait out a windstorm before we were able to descend back down. This is a picture that my photographer friend Ted took of me on our ascent of Fitzroy, and I had the privilege of climbing the Fitzroy twice, once by the famous Super Canaleta route, and another time by the California route, which some of you might be familiar with from the movie that was made by Yvon Chouinard, who made the first ascent of it with some other climbers from the States. And this is me, and actually you can see Super Canaleta from this picture right here. It goes up this steep ice couloir and then joins the ridge over here and tops out. And the California route comes from the other side and climbs this ridge line, the area of that ridge line. And in this picture, I'm actually spreading ashes of one of my friends, Edward Lau, who I've carried on my first ascent of the Goliath back in 2016. And back then, I turned around after completing the full evolution crest traverse, traversing from Paiute Pass to Bishop Pass, because I had a very vivid experience with a voice telling me that if I keep going, I will pass away in the Palisades. And I can't explain that voice or the feeling that I had, but I didn't argue with it. I stopped, and I'm happy that I did. And for a couple of years, I took a break from climbing, because after I hiked out from that attempt, I learned that one of my friends, Julia Mackenzie, died on this same peak I was climbing the day prior to me traversing over it, when she was doing the evolution traverse. And that hit me quite hard. And I don't know if that feeling that I had was because of what happened to Julia, if I'm somehow able to sense that something horrible happened there. I have no idea. Humans can't explain many things, but after that, I did not come back to try the Goliath for quite a few years. And also another experience that I've had in the Palisades that scared me is one time when I went climbing with another famous explorer who was explorer of the past generation, we came out to the Palisades for his first time in 30 years. His name is Cameron Burns. He did many first ascents in the Palisades in the past, and we were planning to do a new route on the backside of the Palisades and Balcony Peak. And on his rest day, I went to free solo the Firebird Ridge, which is a 5.9 that goes up this pillar over here. A hold broke on me on one of the more technical sections of that climb, and I could have died if I did not have 3 points of contact, which I try to exercise at all times when I'm climbing without a rope. So that kind of spooked me from climbing in the Palisades for a few other years, though. It's a beautiful section of the Sierra Crest. As we all know, many SPS peaks in the Palisades. And one of the most enjoyable sections of the Palisade Ridge is a traverse called the Palisade Crest Traverse. I'm not sure if many of you guys are familiar with it, but it's basically the continuation of the ridge past Gandalf Peak. And it stuns me how many people climb Gandalf Peak on the way to completing their SPS list. I think for Louis Holy's trip, there were like 20 people from the SPS list climbing with her. I might be off, but I remember seeing quite a few people. So after those attempts, I came back to the Bay Area to rest, to just photograph things and do easier climbs. And then I again returned in the Sierra. This year, I changed quite a few things about my preparation to attempt the Goliath. One of the things that changed is how I approached 2020, and I've done more ridge traversing in 2020. This is actually the Corcoran Peaks, which are actually a very obscure but a worthy traverse, which was never repeated from what I understand. That's another view of Norman Clyde and Middle Palisade. And this year, I started from doing a lot more conditioning, running. And what I would do is I would drive to Yosemite and take pictures of Yosemite Falls after climbing about 20 pitches and running about 10 miles. And then doing more conditioning during the week, during my work hours, actually. When I worked in Oakland as a travel nurse, they had 2 30-minute breaks during which I was able to do a good amount of running, and a 15-minute break, which I also usually ran on. And these are some of the nicer sections of the Palisade Ridge, which I attempted with a couple of friends in 2020. And in 2021, one of the things I did to prepare myself for the Goliath was solo the shortest straw, which is a difficult aid climb on El Capitan. And that might not seem like the best way to prepare yourself, but in my opinion, it was kind of like cross training, because hauling all your gear and being by yourself for a week is a good way to mentally prepare yourself, because the climbing was a lot scarier on the shortest straw than anything on the Goliath. But of course, the physical strain of it wasn't anywhere as close to that I could experience on the Goliath. And then I went to Alaska, which during which trip me and my friend attempted the North Buttress of Mount Hunter, which is considered one of the hardest climbs in Alaska, which goes up this buttress here. And we got done with all the hardest climbing and got to, I think, approximately this snowfield here before we had to turn around because of a storm. But that wasn't our main objective. And we were just simply happy that we were able to get as far as we could in our short weather window that we got right after unloading from the plane. And this is some of the climbing up on the ridge, and that's my partner. One of the things I learned over the years is that partnerships could be your best friendships, and it's very important to find partners that you enjoy being with for a long time in the mountains. And when we were on Denali itself, we did cook very fancy food and had a great time in general. I summited a couple times, once by climbing from the 14,000 foot camp on the normal route only on the fourth day after leaving base camp. And then my second solo summit to acclimate for the Denali Diamond was it was another solo on the West Rib route, which I also did from 14,000 foot camp. And then we went on to climbing the diamond itself, which was quite intimidating to me and Nick, knowing both of us haven't had an experience in such a big and remote face. And during our climb, we got a visit from Chantella Strogat. You guys might have heard of her. She did the first female solo of the Cassin Ridge this year. And one of the things I learned from Nick is that it's really important to do self-care on the climb. Here we were kind of making sure our feet were okay. And that during the climb, he brought a small radio with us, which allowed us to listen to the local music stations, which kept our psyche intact for most of the route. One of the coolest things about doing this route is that we were able to do only the second free ascent of it in the whole history, and I think it was only the 9th or the 10th ascent of it ever. Summiting took us everything that we had, and it was one of the hardest things that I've done in my life, probably physically, because of how much new snow there were on the upper slopes and Denali, and we had to push on after completing the route because there was an approaching storm, and we didn't even bring a tent with us. It was a very committing experience, after which I continued to run around the Sierra and do link ups that kept me physically strong before I finally got a weather window to attempt the Goliath. One of the things that I've done after returning is a partial traverse of the minarets, during which we traverse from Waller Minaret somewhere to the right over here, where Paul is, over all these summits to Clyde Minaret, and then we went down the rock route. And we didn't really care to climb in the dark, and we started a couple hours after daylight, so we can't really claim the full Minaret Traverse, but we had a lot of fun doing what we did end up climbing. And then the time came to face the Goliath, and Mariah is here with me. She was the person who helped me by driving me through to the trailhead in order for me to start the traverse. If she wasn't able to do so, I still was planning to do the same thing. And if I wasn't able to get a ride to the trailhead, which was the Tinnemaha Creek trailhead, my plan was to go as far as I can, hopefully all the way to the end, and have $100 or $200 in cash with me, and hope for the best that somebody would be able to drive me to drive me back to my car. Um, After working in the emergency department for several years, um, you realize that you can make things happen, and even if maybe it's not the best plan, um, it should still work out in the end. So I started by hiking up to up the Taboose Pass trailhead, and starting up Cardinal Peak, and then traversing to Split Mountain. That's the South Peak, and then the main Split Mountain where I slept on the first night. On the second day, and somebody asked about the section between Cardinal and Split Mountain. It's just garbage. I can't recommend that as a climb itself, but there is actually some really fun climbing from Split Mountain. I'm sorry, from the notch that separates the Split Mountain and Cardinal Peak over to the actual Split Mountain. There is some interesting climbing in this section. And the section that starts down from Cardinal Peak is fairly loose. And then down from Split Mountain, I tried to stay on the crest, climbing over Prater and Bolton Brown. And one of the sections that I wasn't intimidated by it, but I didn't know much about is the traverse to Ed Lane Peak, which actually was quite scary because there's a down climb, which is very, very loose to get into the notch from where the climb actually starts. And I didn't know anything about that section, but in one of the Bob Bird's trip reports, I remember seeing a map which shows if as if he climbed this section. So I thought it all goes at third class, but then when I reread his trip report, he actually said that he was planning to climb Ed Lane Peak, but he couldn't find a way to get down into the notch because the down climb seemed too loose and too exposed for his taste, and he turned around. And I was not able to make an anchor there, so I had to down climb some scary terrain on the way to down to the notch and over the peak. And then I continued down to the thumb and slept at South Fork Pass by this lake, where again I filled up 4 liters of water, and on the next day I continued over towards Middle Palisade, and this is the section between Cardinal Peak and over towards Split Mountain, and this is just an unnamed bump on the way to Split Mountain. And there are many of these significant unnamed bumps between main peaks on this traverse. That's me on top of Middle Palisade from what I remember. And the Middle Palisade is quite an intimidating traverse when it comes to traversing over to Norman Clyde Peak, because the rock is exposed and in sections quite loose in general. So on the third day, I traversed from South Fork Pass over Disappointment Balcony, Excitement Peak, Middle Palisade, exposed Chaspile Spire called Dent to Dent, Bivouac Peak, Norman Clyde Peak, Mount Williams, and then I was able to sleep before starting the 12 pinnacles of the Palisade Crest. And the Palisade Crest, like I said, was one of the more exciting sections of the traverse, and for some reason, it just so happened that on the day that I was traversing them, it was extremely windy, and on one of the more exposed sections where I had to do a very big step across, I got hit by a gust of wind, and I lost my balance. And the only thing that saved me from catapulting down to the glacier was that I had a really good jug, which I was able to hold on to with my hand, because my body got span off balance by the gust of wind. And that was one of the main things that I was afraid of on the traverse in general, is that no single peak was too hard for me, but the combination of doing about 9,000 feet of work every day and the amount of fifth class traversing was just never ending. So the probability of getting into an accident was quite high. And this was the summit pinnacle of Thunderbolt Peak, which I had to basically free solo. I tied myself to my tagline and got to the top so that I can rappel off the top. I did not want to down climb that. And this is a little summit register which I found down the ridge from Thunderbolt Peak after I took a backflip on one of the loose rocks below Thunderbolt, which during which I hurt my hips and I hurt my bicep really bad. And that is Thunderbolt over here, and the traverse towards Agassiz and Winchell, from what I remember. There was just so much terrain. So I slept at Bishop Pass, and then on the following day, I traversed over to Mount No Good, Trapezoid Peak, Mount Johnson, and Mount Gilbert. And after Mount Gilbert, there were quite a few sections that were difficult. For example, the traverse from Mount Good to Trapezoid, and even to Mount Johnson wasn't easy. But the section after Mount Gilbert was especially difficult, but at least this section had very good rock, mostly very good rock. And during this day, I also went on over Mount Thompson and Point Powell and Point Wesley, and slept somewhere above Echo Lake on the way to Clyde Spires. And after my fifth day, that's when the suffering began, because at that point I was quite exhausted by what I've already covered. Both of my ankles were sprained. One of them was sprained more than once. I think this smile was probably a little forced. And this is the section that I mentioned after Mount Gilbert, which was quite exposed and technical. And this is me getting lucky with a BV spot, which I was able to build right on the crest. And to my luck, there were some snow patches on the ridge over here, which allowed me to fill up my water bottles and not have to drop below in order to find a snow patch or a water source, which was one of the harder things to do during 2021 because of how dry the year ended up being and how late I had to start this traverse because of the monsoon season. I haven't had a chance for a week long weather window till August. And this is the beautiful section traversing to Mount Darwin from Mount Heckle here. This section is something that I've done twice already in the past. So though I was familiar with, the section dragged on, and I was quite tired when I was moving over Mount Darwin. This is me about 16.5 pounds lighter than when I started, because that's how much weight I lost during traverse. I had to pack very light in order to be able to accomplish this, because if my backpack had everything that I needed in order to complete the traverse comfortably, I simply would not be able to carry so much weight. So I had to cut weight on every little thing, including my food. And on the last day, I traversed over from below Mount Darwin's north face, where there was another nice spot on the ridge with a water source from the glacier coming down from Mount Darwin's north face. And then I traversed over some unnamed peak over to Tom Ross and Lamarck North, and a couple of other unnamed peaks on the way to Keyhole Plateau, and a bunch of other unnamed but cruxy traversing over unstable rock, exposed technical climbing, which took me down to the Paiute Pass and the end of the Odyssey, which I started over a week ago. And back to my cats. And after that, me and Mariah went to Yellowstone, looked at some wildlife, and I continued enjoying the outdoors and doing some local runs, and actually participated in my first ultra run, which ended up being 100K in the local mountains here, where I'm from, in San Joaquin River Gorge. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask, because I feel like I've talked, and now it's your turn to ask me whatever you want to ask me.
This is Paul. What I think I'd like to ask, if people could type in their questions into the chat. So we have 94 people on, so we can't all talk so well so easily. So if you have specific questions, type them in. I'll start by reading one of them that someone did. Was, how heavy was your pack at the start and at the finish?
I'm not sure how heavy it was at the finish, but at the start it was about 24 pounds or so, and I had about 12 pounds of food, if I remember correctly.
And while I'm waiting for some questions coming, so you carried a rope, like how much rope?
It was a 60 meters of 6mm cord, and I just brought it for rappelling. And in addition to that, I think I brought about 4 nuts and maybe 2 cams, 2 ultralight cams that I brought just in case. But I might be lying when I talk about cams. I might have only had nuts.
And I'll keep it. What do you think was the highest technical grade on the climbing? I guess maybe going up, was it 5'9", 5'10" climbing?
Probably 5'9", maybe 10A. There were a couple sections that I've done in the middle of it that were probably more technically difficult, more technically difficult than the Thunder Blocks Summit block, but I can't even tell you where they were, and they are definitely avoidable if you are trying to, if you don't want to take the direct line, you can avoid all that stuff. And I was mostly trying to avoid things like 400-foot down climbs in order to save my strength for the duration of the route, and trying to hurry with my route finding so that I could get from the point where I started to the point where I planned to go in the most efficient way, if it makes any sense. Mm-hmm. And every day I was trying to finish by about 5 p.m. so that I have enough time to relax and recover for the next day. I was very aware that I have to pace myself like an ultra marathoner in order to be able to keep going on the following day and the day after that and the day after that. So I tried to move consistently, efficiently, and pace myself in a conservative fashion.
Did you, for the number of days, did you plan it for a certain number of days, and is that what it ended up being, or were you longer?
Yep.
Shorter?
My biggest goal was to complete this traverse alpine style without making caches along the way, just because I thought it would be the hardest thing that I could do. If I had caches, I could have started from Mount Whitney or somewhere much farther, or keep going much farther. But I felt like this would be the longest section of the most technical part of the Sierra Crest that I could do alpine style, carrying my own weight. And I planned exactly for the number of days that it ended up being. And if I had to, I could probably stay there for maybe another 2 days if I cut my portions in the end significantly. But unfortunately, I didn't have to do that.
Okay, and then John Ripley was asking, how much rappelling did you do? Did you keep count or know how many you had to do?
No, I probably rappelled a couple times and some days, and not at all during other days. It was just depending on the day. I think going over from Middle Palisade over to Norman Clyde, I rappelled a couple times in that section. But I try to down climb more because it saves time, and trying to untangle a 60 meter 6 millimeter cord is hell. So I try to avoid that as much as I could.
Mm-hmm. A few people have asked about what kind of camera did you carry?
I just carried my cell phone.
So all the shots you saw were just cell phone, right?
Mm-hmm. A few of the shots are from previous attempts. So maybe the quality of some of the pictures of the Sierra Crest were nicer than something that I could do with my phone. I carried a Sony A6000, I believe, when I attempted the what was dubbed the Full Monty Palisade Traverse last year with 2 partners. But this time I basically cut every single thing that is heavier and brought only the essentials. And I had to ditch the camera.
Mm-hmm. So then, and then Ryan asked, how did you handle the mental toll of being on such exposed rock for such an extended period of time? And how do you prepare for some of the looser sections of the traverse?
Oh, it was draining. It was draining on me psychologically, and I think that's where uh, doing something like soloing the shortest round El Capitan came in handy, because I was alone for a good number of days then, and I had to deal with some loose rock, and depending on basically gear supporting my body on loose rock.
Very interesting.
But when it comes to actually dealing with loose rock, I think repeating some of the more obscure traverses in the Sierra prepared me for that more. Like this year, me and my friend Richard Shore did what we think was probably an unrepeated traverse of the Paiute Crags. And then we also did another obscure traverse called the Kearsarge Pinnacles Traverse. And I've done a lot of scrambling in the Sierra after coming back from Mount Denali. And one day I linked up the Tuolumne Triple, which is the northwest buttress of Tenaya Peak, southeast buttress of Cathedral, full Mathis Crest Traverse to the northwest ridge of North Peak, and the north ridge of Conness in a day. So I just did a lot more scrambling in the last 1 or 2 years.
And looking at keeping track of time, but a few more questions maybe before we end it. And
oh, please.
Jeffrey Solomon asks, can you talk about your diet during the traverse? I saw a pot in the stove, so it wasn't all bars, but how did you manage that?
So my diet was the best part, because I was able to eat Snicker bars and all these things that I can't eat otherwise, because I'm trying to watch my figure. I'm still hoping that one day I will be able to retire from nursing by becoming an underwear model. So I'm trying to watch my diet now. Anyway, so yeah, for my snacks, I brought a mix of junk food, basically, which is Skittles, Snicker bars, chocolate, cookies, anything sweet, and anything with a lot of calories. In the evening, I would have a freeze-dried meal, and in the morning, I would have I think 2 packets of oatmeal with some chocolate, basically. It wasn't, it was actually good food that I was excited about, because I mixed raisins and other little things into my breakfasts, and all my dinners were tasty, and my snacks were high calorie and enjoyable as well. But it was just not enough of food when you're covering so much terrain. And one of the things I did, which is kind of interesting, is I got rid of all my freeze-dried food bags, like Mountain House bags, for example. If you combine 5 of them together, they weigh as much as a Nalgene. So I basically cut a lot of weight by just loading all my snacks and Mountain House meals into small Ziploc bags, and they took up a lot less space too.
Related to food, did you try to estimate the number of calories you needed per day in order to come up with your total volume?
Yeah, I tried to bring high calorie food, and I added some oil into my dinners, and also brought some peanut butter for every day of the traverse. Also, my stove and my pot weighed only 100 grams together. For example, if you compare it to bringing a jet boil Sol, which is a very small and compact stove, that would be over 300 grams, and the combination I had was only 100 grams together.
Okay. And then David Hodge was asking, how well did you sleep during the traverse, and what was your sleep system?
I did not sleep well, mostly because I was worried about the next day on most nights. The sleep system actually was quite comfortable, and I was able to avoid popping my blow up sleeping pad. My sleeping pad was one of those Uber Light Thermarest pads, from what I remember. I had a 6-ounce BV sack. Um, I can't remember the brand that makes it. And then underneath it, um, I put out one of those, God, what are they called? Um, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a very thin layer of light material that I added underneath the BV sack, which I hoped would help me prevent popping my Thermarest blow up sleeping pad. And I had a quilt, a down quilt that weighed less than a pound.
Excellent. And then Ron and Christina asked a nice question. Did you meet any people on the peaks along the way?
No, I did not meet any people till I hit Keyhole Plateau. And there I ran into 3 guys and I almost cried. I was so happy to see other people. Like every time you go to Yosemite or some popular place, you see people everywhere, and you wish it was not as popular. But when I saw the first people, I was so happy to see them, because I felt really lonely out there. Every night I would go to sleep looking around, trying to spot any headlamps that would be in the surrounding areas, and the only sign of other people I would see is lights from Bishop or Big Pine or any of those towns.
Excellent. I think we're probably running up against probably everyone's time. I did want to leave the last question that I see, which I think is the appropriate one, from Bill Sherman, asking, what is planned next for you, Vitaliy, in your climbing?
Well, right now I'm just doing a lot of training. Like today I did a really hard gym workout before the slideshow. I was just on the Stairmaster for 2 hours with a heavy backpack, and then did some bouldering and campus boarding. My hope is to go to Nepal during this spring with the same partner that I climbed the Denali Diamond with. A few weeks ago, he told me that he would be free to climb this spring, so we decided that we will go over to Nepal and hopefully find something inspiring to do there.
And are there other ridge traverses yet to be done in the Sierra that you've got your eye on?
A few.
That shall go nameless until you do them?
Yeah, I don't like talking about things before doing them.
That was, and maybe that was be the last question. So had you told, or did anybody really know that you were doing this other than Mariah?
Just a few of my best friends. I told a couple good friends when I was attempting the Traverse in 2016, and this year one of my best friends that I climbed with, Daniel Jeff Coach, was like one of the people who I've sent messages about my progress using one of those spot devices. Is that what it's called? Garmin InReach. There, Garmin InReach Mini, and yeah. Another thing I did over the last year in order to commit myself more to this traverse is I actually told more people that I want to do it, because I felt like if I keep it only to myself, I'm not I'm not as committed to actually going there and doing it.
Okay, I think we've went through the questions. If you could actually, can you stop sharing your screen?
Mhm.
And then we can get everyone else back on like the bigger gallery view.
Yay.
And I, I guess on behalf of the committee, unless there's anyone else on the committee that wanted to say anything, I wanted to thank Vitaliy for giving us this presentation about the Goliath Traverse and all the other great climbs. I want to thank everyone for joining this banquet, making this, I think, probably without a doubt, the largest banquet we've ever had. There were 100 people on, and I think we may have had a glitch where I think we were limited in our Zoom call to 100 people. So if anyone tells you they couldn't get on, that may be why, and that was our fault. But we are going to try to get this thing posted somewhere, and we'll get the word out once we get it, the recording posted, so people can go and view it who maybe weren't able to get on the call with us. So with that, thank you everyone, and join the SPS if you haven't. It's only like $10 a year. You'll get a newsletter, you'll get invites to this kind of thing, and join our Facebook page for other news. And again, thank you, Vitaliy and everyone else, and we will see you next year at the 2023 banquet.